Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my series, The Fastest Way to Health. This is part 5, Dr. Quiet. Remember, the fastest way to health is being honest with yourself. What a concept. Remember, you can't be more honest with anybody else than you can be with yourself, just like you cannot love anybody more than you can love yourself. You can only write rubber checks, and they bounce. So today we're going to get into some of the essentials of Dr. Quiet. Now, I do go into more detail in the last 4 doctors you'll ever need, How to Get Healthy Now multimedia ebook, but there's quite a comprehensive chapter on sleep in How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy that gets into all sorts of stuff that I can only touch on. And once again, in our Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 online training program, which you can do live, it's a 3-day workshop live, or you can do it online without an instructor or with an instructor, where you get guided session by session, get your questions answered, and it takes you deeper than the books and shows you how to apply the material in the books and gives you practical coaching from a skilled expert. So the first thing I want to share about Dr. Quiet is that lack of sleep can cause many serious health problems. There are several great books on sleep out there. One that comes to my mind right off the top of my head is called Lights Out. I don't remember the author's name. But if you search some of the books out there and just look at the reviews, you can find loads of great books on the issues of sleep deprivation and all the problems it causes. And the statistics are really quite wild, how not only how many people are sleep deprived, but for example, I found research showing the average college student is only getting between 4.5 and 5 hours of sleep a night. That is a serious deficit of sleep, and it leads to all sorts of problems with people doing things like cutting themselves with knives, power tools, cognitive disorders, things getting screwed up in the workplace, auto accidents. The list is long. It costs the government insurance companies literally billions of dollars a year due to the illnesses and injuries created by sleep loss alone. Sleep deprivation or lack of sleep can cause significant physical problems. It can cause significant hormonal imbalances, such as blood sugar handling problems. It can cause people to gain a lot of weight. I mentioned cognitive disorders. It can cause mood swings, so it causes emotional problems. People get very grouchy, aggressive, reactive, negative, depressive, and it can cause mental problems of a wide variety, but it causes cognitive disorder quite quick, which means the ability to process information. So it's sleep. Not getting enough sleep is a very, very common problem we have, largely due to so much media engagement, computers, televisions, tablets, phones. And if you look at the research on sleep, your body is extremely sensitive to photons. We are not designed for exposure to a lot of light after the sun naturally goes down. Remember, our bodies have been evolving for a long time. I mean, depending on what your belief system is, but we are the kind of tip of the evolutionary sword, which means we started all the way back as single-celled organisms and lived for billions of years in our progressive development and lived on the natural day-night cycle driven by the sun and the day-night cycle, the sun-moon cycle. So we're making very, very rapid changes relative to the pace that our body can evolve and adapt to these things, and it causes a hell of a lot of problems for people. Some of them very, very serious problems. As a general rule, people need 8 hours of sleep a night. There are a variety of articles and researchers saying there's people that need less than that. Then there's people like night owls. To be honest with you, in my career, I've met very few people that function well and have mental clarity and good health and vitality and a healthy sex drive and a high level of creativity that aren't getting 8 hours of sleep a night the majority of the time. Inevitably, life throws, surprises at you. You have a child, and believe me, I have a 2-year-old now, so, any mother and new parent is going to go into sleep deprivation, and it is going to be very hard on them, and it can be very, very hard on relationships due to the stress it causes and the emotional reactions and mental confusion. In fact, in a university course I studied from the teaching company on current sleep science, they actually showed that, I think it's for the first year, if I remember right, after a woman gives birth, she gets so sleep deprived her brain actually starts to shrink. There's noticeable shrinkage in the entire brain structure due to neuron death, due to lack of sleep, which comes with cognitive disorders and all sorts of problems. There's some really cool current research out there showing us all sorts of wild stuff that we didn't know before, which is more than I can get into in this blog. Now, when I did my training in functional medicine testing with Dr. Bill Timmons, the founder of BioHealth Diagnostics, his own research showed, and other sources suggested, that our body has a physical repair cycle and a psychogenic repair cycle. From 10 p.m. till 2 a.m., the body focuses largely on repairing the physical structure of the body. From 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., if we're in our normal sleep cycle, the energies are focused on psychogenic repairs. So things like the brain and nervous system and the effects that it has on our psyche, or our ability to sense, feel, be sentient, and use our minds effectively. And some people have asked me, where's the research on that? Well, I learned that from Dr. Timmons, but it doesn't matter. What does matter is I learned that from Dr. Timmons probably around the year 2000, and I have monitored countless numbers of patients since then and found that there are definitely clear indicators that people that are skipping the 10 to 2 cycle, especially if they're athletes, start having more problems with physical repair. They don't recover as well from exercise. They get a lot more niggling injuries. And people that skip the cycle from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. start having a lot more mental, emotional, and cognitive problems. And for example, a lot of these people stop dreaming, and dreaming is very, very important to our capacity to integrate our psyche and mental functions. And some researchers suggest that dreaming has the function that would be the equivalent of defragmenting a computer. If you don't know what that means, it means cleaning up all the systems so there's not cross-contamination between software programming, getting rid of bugs and pop-up windows and stuff that confuse programs. So when we don't get enough sleep time for the defragmenting process, our mind stops being integrated, and that shows up as all kinds of symptoms. Two very common symptoms, or three, is attention deficit type behavior. I've seen that plenty of times clear up with proper sleep. Anxiety and depression. The depression would be what happens if you don't get enough sleep for a longer period of time. So you want to pay close attention. Generally, I tell people, as I share in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, in the sleep chapter, you want to have head on pillow at the latest by 10:30, or you're cutting in too deep into that physical repair cycle. I've also found with myself and many other people that pretty much every second after about 10:30, your body starts to get tired and trigger an elevation of cortisol levels, and you can get to the point shortly thereafter where you cannot fall asleep very well and you don't get a deep sleep because you got too much cortisol in the system. Research on sleep, for example, when they're doing sleep research studies and they have people in darkened rooms, they found that all you got to do is take a laser pointer like you use to point at a screen if you're giving a lecture, and even though the person can't see it, all they got to do is point it at their toe, and it'll elevate cortisol levels and cause them to wake up, because we have what are called cryptochrome cells in our body that pick up photons and deliver them to the hypothalamus and related brain areas and trigger an awakening process, which means one of the key things that you need to do is make sure your room is well darkened, whether that means taping curtains or tying curtains shut or covering windows. This is a big deal. Shutting off electronics that have lights on them. The LED lights on television, stereos, and all sorts of stuff is adequate amounts of light to trigger the body to wake up. Now, napping is very, very helpful. Some of the research suggests you can never regain lost sleep, but napping is about the best you can do. I've worked with lots of it in my life and used it in coaching people for many different issues, particularly people involved in shift work. A tip for you on napping: you generally do not want to nap longer than 20 minutes because it causes the body to fall into what's referred to as a hibernation state. And I find in my patients that and even in myself, they can't fully come awake after that because the body wants to sleep. Some of you will notice this with jet travel and jet lag. And then what happens is people usually have to resort to stimulants, teas, and coffees to bring them up again, which triggers off a whole cascade of problems in itself. Now, one of the things is shift work causes a lot of problems for people. I've had many patients with a variety of diseases and tracked that they're on shift work for too long a periods of time. Their bodies cannot adapt effectively. So you need to be paying very close attention to how your body's responding, because shift work can cause a lot of problems. Most people cannot handle more than 2 to 3 weeks on any shift that disrupts the normal 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. sleep cycle before they start having significant physical, emotional, and mental health problems. I've had to have doctors write letters to employers many, many times to get people off of shift work because there was no way they could recover. And each of us has a different capacity to adapt to time zone shifts. Our internal clock is set to the place we were born. I had a case one time of a woman, if I remember right, she had cancer and chronic back pain and a few other things. And one of the things that I noticed is that she was not sleeping well and had not slept well. So as I investigated, I found that she, if I remember right, she lived in New York, was born in the New York area, but had moved to California, had been working here. I think she was a nurse. This is like 15 years ago. And it got so bad, I said, look, here's what I suggest you do. I'd like you to take a 2-week vacation and go home to the area that you were raised and do nothing but relax and sleep in the normal sleep cycle for the time zone there and see what happens. Well, lo and behold, I got a call from her a couple weeks later. She ultimately came back to see me. But what happened was, it was as though God had reached down from the sky and did a magic healing on her. All sorts of aches, pains, and problems went away. She started feeling much better. She started healing and ultimately had to move back to finish the healing. So my point is, each of us has a different capacity to adapt to time zone shifts, and our internal clock is set to where we were born. Some of us can move away and eventually adapt, but in my opinion, it's a chronic long-term stressor for pretty much anybody because your biological clock is set to where you're from. So some of the things that are important in my book, How Do You Move and Be Healthy, I go into sleep hygiene. Grounding mats are very, very important and helpful today. If you go to Amazon.com and just search grounding mat, or maybe Penny will put it on your screen for you. Grounding mats bleed your body of electromagnetic pollution. They ground it into the earth or into the grounding port on the wall socket, and they can have huge effects on chronic inflammation in the body, improving it. Joint problems, hormonal problems, cognitive problems often clear up just from using a grounding mat. Of course, you still have to get the right amount of sleep. Other things is our buildings are full of electronics, and anytime you're having problems getting quality sleep, you should unplug everything in the room, not just turn it off. Many of modern electronics like televisions have what are called ready-on circuits, so they never actually shut off, just they shut the screen off or the sound off, but the internal workings stay on, so it's producing electromagnetic pollution all night long. So you want to unplug everything in your room, and if you have to use an alarm clock, then get a wind-up clock or put your phone on airplane mode and just leave it on the battery and minimize that and keep it away from your bed. And that can be very, very helpful. There's nothing wrong with a wind-up clock. They work just as good. Now, wireless systems can cause tremendous amounts of problems for people. I've mentioned in past blogs I had a very bad neck injury probably about 10 years ago now, where I tore many ligaments in my spine, blew 2 discs out at C5, 6, and 6, 7, had spinal cord compression, and I used to have numbing in my arm and pain all night long in my neck and my arm, and I would roll over so much at night that it wore holes through sheets. And then when something triggered me, I can't remember what it was, to wonder if maybe shutting our wireless system off in the house would help. And we shut the wireless system on, and I had the first deep sleep and didn't even remember rolling over at all, and have since stopped wearing holes in sheets and feel tremendously better, had a lot of reduction in symptoms, and I investigated it. And I did a blog not too long back on the dangers of belly button earrings and nose rings, and I highlighted a book by Nicholas Pineault, which I highly recommend. If you just search Nicholas Pineault, Penny can put the name of the book on your screen, and he gives you all sorts of excellent suggestions for protecting yourself from electromagnetic frequencies. So make sure wireless systems are off. If you are in a building where there's many other wireless systems, I would highly recommend you either study Nicholas Pineault's book, use some of that concepts, or get yourself the Aries Tech card, which can give you a 6-foot field of protection, which is what I use when I travel in hotels and on airplanes and things like that. Can be very, very helpful. We also have to worry about noise pollution and light pollution, such as cars' lights flashing, noise in the area. If you have to get a pair of comfortable earplugs or night shades that you can wear on your eyes to block the lighting, do what you've got to do. If you have to move. It'll be cheaper than the health challenges in the long run. These are very, very important issues. Our bodies are very, very sensitive to sleep, and many people try to justify their late nights or tell themselves they're night owls, but they come pay me lots of money when their life's falling apart and sit there and tell me why they don't need 8 hours of sleep. But I've been looking at this stuff for 32 years, and I can smell the rat quickly, and most people are actually so trapped in their intellect, they're not paying attention to the sensations, their feelings, or using their intuition or their instincts, which are critical for all of us to be healthy. So that's my tips on Dr. Quiet. There's much more that I could go into, but it would get too comprehensive. That's what Holistic Lifestyle Coach Training's for. That's what How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy is for. That's what my 4 Doctors ebook and audio expansions are for. If you just practice what I've shared with you here, your life can change for the better very, very quickly. In our final part, part 6, I will do an integration on all these concepts and talk about ways to apply them in your life. So thanks for joining me. Look forward to sharing with you in part 6. I'm Paul Chek.